NATO armor leads a Ukrainian combined arms assault on 4 hardened Russian positions. And in 38 hours, a defensive network that had absorbed every Ukrainian attack for 5 months collapses at its weakest structural joint, opening a gap that neither side had expected to exist by the end of the second day. Monday, 3:52 a.m. A tree line 400 meters behind the forward edge of the battle area in Luhansk Oblast. A Ukrainian company commander crouched behind his Leopard 2A5 and read the same intelligence summary he had read 3 times since midnight. Not because the information had changed, but because he was looking for the detail he had missed on the first 2 readings. The summary described a Russian defensive network that had been constructed over 5 months. 3 mutually supporting strong points arranged in a triangular formation, each one covering the approaches to the other 2. Each one capable of calling indirect fire on any attack against either of the others. The triangle had defeated 4 Ukrainian attack attempts over 19 weeks, not by destroying the attacking force, but by making the cost of each attempt high enough that the attacking unit had withdrawn before achieving its objective. The company commander's predecessor had commanded the first of those 4 attempts. He had commanded the second and the third. He was about to command the 5th. What was different about the 5th was not his Leopard 2A5. The first 3 attempts had used T-64s, and the 4th had used a mix of T-64s and a Bradley platoon attached from the brigade reserve. What was different was the targeting picture he held, which was the product of a NATO intelligence support cell that had spent 3 weeks studying the triangle's internal geometry with synthetic aperture radar imagery collected at 6-hour intervals, tracking the logistics routes and communications patterns of each strong point until the analysis cell had produced a finding that none of the 4 previous attack commanders had possessed. The triangle's 3 strong points were not equally connected. 2 of them shared a primary communications relay and a logistics route. They were functionally joined. The third, positioned on the triangle's northern apex, used a separate relay and a separate supply route. The triangle looked like 3 mutually supporting positions. It was actually 2 mutually supporting positions, and one that supported the other 2, but could not call on them for immediate assistance without a 12-minute communications relay lag. 12 minutes was the gap. The 5th attack was aimed at it. The intelligence finding had been transmitted to the brigade commander 11 days earlier. He had spent 7 of those days arguing against it, not because he doubted the analysis, but because attacking the northern apex meant approaching across 500 meters of open ground with no natural concealment, exactly the terrain geometry that had produced the highest Ukrainian casualty rate in the 3rd attack attempt. The analysis cell's counter-argument was precise. Yes, the approach was exposed. Yes, the other 2 strong points would engage the attacking element. But engaging from their fixed positions at ranges between 800 and 2,200 meters against a moving armored formation, without coordinated communications to the northern apex that would allow them to adjust their fires based on what the northern apex observers were seeing, they would be firing on pre-planned target reference points rather than observed adjusted fire. Pre-planned fire against moving armor at 1,200 meters in reduced visibility was less dangerous than it appeared. The Leopard 2A5's composite armor, rated to defeat the T-72B3's 3BM46 APF's DS round at combat ranges, was the specific protection that made the 500-meter exposed approach survivable in conditions where pre-planned fire, rather than observed adjusted fire, was the threat. The brigade commander stopped arguing after the 7th day. The attack was planned. Subscribe and hit the bell. This level of operational analysis runs here every week. The preparation fires began at 3:52 a.m., 41 minutes before the first Leopard crossed the start line. Not suppression fires against the northern apex, suppression fires against the 2 southern strongpoints, the ones that would attempt to engage the attacking element across the open ground during the 500-meter approach. 6 M109A7 Paladin howitzers firing a mix of Excalibur precision rounds and standard M107 smoke rounds in alternating sequence, designed to simultaneously degrade the observation from the 2 southern strongpoints and maintain accurate impacts on their fighting positions to keep crews below their parapet. The smoke did not blind the southern strongpoints completely. It reduced their observation range from the approximately 800 meters of clear air visibility to approximately 340 meters. Enough to see the Leopards once they were already inside the range, at which pre-planned fire against moving armor begins to be genuinely dangerous. 340 meters instead of 800. The 500-meter approach run would be conducted under pre-planned fire for the first 160 meters. After that, the smoke would reduce the southern strongpoints to reactive point defense range. The Leopard company would be through their effective observation window before they could generate observed adjusted fires. What's your assessment? Type A if you believe the intelligence finding identifying the 12-minute communications lag to the northern apex as a structural flaw in the triangle was the single element that made the fifth attack viable where the first four had failed. Type C if you believe the Leopard 2A5's specific protection against 3BM46 fire at 1,200 meters was the enabling capability, since the same intelligence finding without the Leopard would have produced the same exposed approach with unacceptable casualties. Drop your full tactical analysis in the comments. The northern apex received no preparation fires. Silence against the northern apex was a deliberate deception. The analysis cell had assessed that fires against the northern apex would activate its communications relay, producing the 12-minute lag traffic that both confirmed the timing assessment and warned the northern apex that it was being isolated. Silence against the northern apex created ambiguity. Was the attack aimed at the northern apex or at one of the two southern strongpoints that were receiving fires? The northern apex garrison's morning intelligence log, recovered later, showed that the duty officer had assessed the fires pattern as an attack on the southwestern strongpoint until the Leopard formation crossed the start line at 4:33 a.m. on a bearing that was clearly aimed at the northern apex. The assessment lag cost the northern apex's garrison commander 4 minutes of preparation before the first Leopards were visible. 4 minutes is enough to unmask a single cornet team, designate a primary engagement position, and issue a general alert. It is not enough to activate the communications relay, transmit a coordinated engagement request to the two southern strongpoints, receive acknowledgement, and integrate their fires into a coordinated defense. The 12-minute lag was not a theoretical vulnerability. It was confirmed in the northern apex garrison's own log as the window that determined when their defense became reactive rather than coordinated. The 500-meter approach under pre-planned fire from the two southern strongpoints produced 2 hits on the Leopard formation. The first, a 3BM46 round from a T-72B3 in the southwestern strongpoint, fired at 1,140 meters on a bearing that struck the second Leopard's forward hull at an angle 12 degrees from perpendicular. The Leopard 2A5's composite armor panel in the forward hull zone is rated to defeat this round at this angle at ranges above 900 meters. The round was defeated. The crew reported a significant impact. The tank rocked. The commander described the sound as a hammer strike against the hull, but no penetration. The thermal sight remained functional. The tank continued its advance without reducing speed. The second hit, an RPG-7 round fired from a dismounted Russian infantry position in the open ground between the southwestern strongpoint and the northern apex, an ambush position that the reconnaissance picture had not identified. The RPG impacted the second Leopard's track assembly on the right side. The track was damaged but not severed. The tank could maneuver at reduced speed. It did not stop. It reduced speed to 8 kilometers per hour and continued on the axis, covering the remaining 300 meters to the northern apex's outer perimeter at the reduced speed while the following element passed it on the left. 14 Leopard 2A5s reached the northern apex outer perimeter. The RPG-damaged tank reached the perimeter 40 seconds behind the formation, but reached it. The first engagement with the northern apex prepared defense, 2 T-72B3 tanks in hull-down positions, 1 cornet team, and approximately 60 Russian infantry in prepared trenches, began at 4:41 a.m. and ran for 22 minutes. The 2 T-72B3s in hull-down positions engaged from 820 meters. The Leopard 2A5's EMS-15 thermal sight identified both tanks in hull-down position through the residual smoke at 820 meters within 11 seconds of entering the engagement zone. The Leopard's L-44 120mm gun fired first, 2 rounds each against the 2 T-72 positions. The first round to confirm the aim point on a hull-down target, the second fired within 4 seconds of the first before the T-72 commander could assess the near miss and commence evasive action. Both T-72s were destroyed on their second rounds. The Cornet team fired 1 missile at 4:44 a.m. at a range of 100 meters. The missile tracked correctly. The Leopard commander, who was its target, executed the lateral displacement maneuver that the NATO training protocol specifies for semi-automatic command-guided missiles. A hard lateral move at the moment the missile enters its mid-flight correction phase. The missile missed by 4 meters. The Cornet team was identified by the Bradley element that had entered the northern apex's eastern flank simultaneously with the Leopard frontal assault and was destroyed by a TOW missile at 4:46 a.m. The 22-minute fight for the northern apex produced the outcome the analysis cell had predicted but could not guarantee. The 2 southern strongpoints, firing pre-planned indirect on the approach zone behind the Leopard formation, could not adjust their fire to the northern apex engagement zone without the relay traffic that the northern apex communications link could not generate under the combat load it was carrying. They fired. The rounds impacted in the open ground the Leopards had already crossed. The northern apex's garrison requested adjusted fire support at 4:43 a.m., 2 minutes after the first T-72 was destroyed. The request traversed the relay node. The relay node processed it. The acknowledgement returned at 4:55 a.m., 12 minutes and 40 seconds after transmission. At 4:55 a.m., the northern apex had been under assault for 14 minutes. By 4:55 a.m., both its T-72s were destroyed, its Cornet team was dead, and the Leopard formation was engaging its trench line at ranges below 300 meters. The adjusted fires request that arrived 12 minutes and 40 seconds after it was sent was tactically irrelevant to a position already in close combat with 14 tanks. The northern apex fell at 5:03 a.m. The triangle's northern vertex ceased to exist as a functioning defensive position in 22 minutes of combat from the moment the first Leopard reached its outer perimeter. The entire operation from start line crossing to northern apex capture, 30 minutes. What would you have ordered as the commander of the 2 surviving southern strongpoints at 5:03 a.m.? With your northern apex gone, 14 Leopards now on terrain that overlooks both your positions, the Ukrainian second echelon entering the gap the northern apex's fall had opened, your communications relay still carrying the 12-minute lag, and the M10A7 suppression fires that had been blinding your observation since 3:52 a.m. Now shifting to your own fighting positions as the Leopards turn south? Hold in your prepared positions and accept that the Leopards now have a flanking fire angle on both strongpoints simultaneously? Withdraw immediately through your pre-planned extraction route before the second echelon closes the gap? Or commit your QRF, the infantry company you've been holding in reserve, to retake the northern apex before the Ukrainian second echelon consolidates? Leave your decision in the comments. The commander of the southwestern strongpoint ordered his QRF to move at 5:11 a.m., 8 minutes after the northern apex fell. The QRF was a reinforced infantry company of 112 soldiers in 8 BTR 82A armored personnel carriers positioned in a tree line 400 meters southeast of the northern apex. The movement order was the tactically correct response to a situation where retaking the northern apex before Ukrainian consolidation was the only option that preserved the triangle's structural integrity. It was also the movement that the Ukrainian second echelon's TB2 drone, which had been orbiting at 400-800 meters altitude since 4 a.m., had been waiting for. The QRF departed its tree line at 5:13 a.m. The TB2 transmitted coordinates at 5:14 a.m. HIMARS fires, 2 GMLR's rockets, impacted the BTR column at 5:18 a.m. in open terrain, 600 meters from the tree line. 4 BTRs destroyed. The column stopped. The remaining 4 BTRs returned to the tree line. The QRF did not reach the northern apex. The Ukrainian second echelon reached the northern apex at 5:31 a.m. and began consolidation. The collapse of the triangle's structural integrity, which the northern apex's fall and the QRF's interdiction had produced simultaneously, triggered a withdrawal decision from the southeastern strongpoint at 5:44 a.m. Not the southwestern strongpoint, whose commander had committed his QRF and whose extraction route was now covered by the Leopard formation on the northern apex. The southeastern strongpoint's commander assessed his extraction route as still viable and ordered withdrawal before the Ukrainian second echelon could close it. The withdrawal moved correctly for the first 800 meters, through a dead ground corridor that the Leopard formation's position on the northern apex could not observe directly. At 800 meters, the corridor turned east and crossed a road that the Ukrainian second echelon's lead Bradleys had reached at 5:39 a.m. The Bradley element had not been moving toward the extraction corridor. It had been moving toward its consolidation objective on the eastern flank of the northern apex. Its position at 5:44 a.m. was on the road that the southeastern withdrawal column was about to cross. The Bradley element's commander saw the BTR column appear at the road junction at 5:51 a.m. at a range of 260 meters. He engaged with 25mm chain gunfire. 3 BTRs were destroyed before the remaining column reversed out of the junction. The southeastern withdrawal was blocked. The column sheltered in place in the dead ground corridor until 7:17 a.m., when the company commander accepted that the extraction route was closed and transmitted a surrender request through his radio. 41 Russian soldiers from the southeastern strongpoint surrendered at 7:31 a.m. The southwestern strongpoint, whose QRF had been destroyed and whose extraction route was covered by the Leopard formation, held its position until 9:44 a.m., when the Leopard formation conducted a direct assault from the north and the Ukrainian second echelon's infantry element attacked from the east simultaneously. The two-direction assault produced the same tactical result at the southwest that the single-direction assault had produced at the northern apex in less time. Prepared positions designed to defeat single-axis attacks are not designed for two simultaneous axes from directions that require the defense to split its observation and fire. The southwestern strongpoint's last T-72B3 was destroyed at 9:51 a.m. The garrison surrendered at 10:09 a.m. 114 Russian soldiers captured. 38 hours after the first Leopard crossed the start line, the triangle had ceased to exist. 3 strongpoints, one taken by direct assault in 22 minutes, one surrendered after its extraction route was blocked by an accidental Bradley encounter, one taken by a two-direction assault in 25 minutes after its QRF was destroyed on first movement. The 12-minute relay lag had produced exactly the cascade the analysis had predicted. The intelligence finding was the blueprint. The Leopards, Bradleys, HIMARS, and TB2 executed it. The brigade commander's after-action review produced 3 findings that would enter the NATO training curriculum. The first, the smoke and Excalibur alternating sequence had reduced southern strongpoint observation range from 800 to 340 meters, and the alternating rhythm had forced observers down during Excalibur intervals, producing range overestimates of approximately 200 meters at every observation point, buying the Leopard formation 40 additional seconds of approach time beyond the planning estimate. The second, the RPG-damaged Leopard's decision to continue at reduced speed rather than halting had maintained formation integrity and prevented it becoming a fixed target for the southwestern T-72 at 300 meters. The third, the Bradley's accidental interdiction of the southeastern withdrawal column, its consolidation movement arriving at the road junction simultaneously with the withdrawal column, produced the decisive outcome that closed the escape route no planning had designated it to cover. The review noted that consolidation movements warrant the same ISR coverage as assault movements, since the post-assault environment often produces the most consequential encounters during the phase planning treats as administrative. NATO armor broke the Russian positions not by defeating the triangle the way the previous 4 attempts had tried, direct assault against a mutually supporting fire network, but by finding the structural seam and exploiting it faster than the 12-minute relay lag could coordinate a defense. The Leopard 2A5 made the exposed approach survivable. The intelligence analysis made it worth making. HIMARS destroyed the QRF before it could restore the network's integrity. The Bradley encountered the withdrawal column. No plan had designated it to interdict. All 4 were required. None was sufficient alone. The triangle had absorbed 4 attacks that possessed some of these elements, never all simultaneously. The fifth had all 4. The seam had been there for 5 months. The tool to find it arrived in week 19 after 3 weeks of analysis. The 5 months cost 4 attacks. The 3 weeks cost an analysis. Preparation is cheaper than repetition. It requires only the patience to conduct it before the 5th attempt rather than after. Does the 12-minute communications relay lag, a structural flaw present for 5 months and invisible to 4 attack attempts, represent a failure of prior Ukrainian intelligence collection or evidence that the specific synthetic aperture radar analysis methodology the NATO cell applied was genuinely novel and could not have been replicated with previously available collection assets? What does the RPG damage Leopard's decision to continue advancing at reduced speed and the tactical difference it made in the final 300-meter approach tell us about the relationship between vehicle survivability standards and the tactical decision-making doctrine that determines whether a damaged vehicle is an asset or an obstacle during an assault? And does the accidental Bradley interdiction of the southeastern withdrawal column represent luck that should be incorporated into planning as a probabilistic outcome of well-executed consolidation movements? Or a genuine tactical accident that the after-action review was right to categorize separately from the planned elements of the operation? Like the video if this breakdown delivered what you came for. Subscribe, hit the bell, and leave your read on the 38-hour triangle collapse in the comments. The next deep dive is already in production.